And up next, we have a fireside chat. This is about empowering India to be a global development hub for Web 3.0 and Metaverse. I'd like to invite Ms. Kavya Prasad, the founder at Lumos Lab. She's the founder of Lumos Lab, so welcome, Kavya. And Mr. Harman Puri, director of Blockchain. So let's see if it's going to be a fireside chat or a fiery chat. Over to you all.
Okay. Get started.
Topic for today, I guess, metaverse. I think that's quite obvious since the morning. Maybe we'll get into a discussion about something different rather than just decentralization, digitalization, token economy. Apart from all that, metaverse is much more, right? And we all know the basic definition of having a virtual world where we can interact, where we can feel, where we can connect with people. But let's talk about the other side of metaverse, which people think are challenges, but they can also be opportunity for further growth and innovation. So I'll coin the term digital identity in metaverse. Any thoughts on that?
Right. So, in terms of digital identities, they have always existed, right? But with the metaverse, what you get to see is a visual layer on top. Obviously, blockchain is a layer below the metaverse. It's not the metaverse per se. So, blockchain has helped us decentralize these identities, right? So, you have data privacy and you can't really breach it by hacking a centralized server. With the metaverse, for example, let's take identities in terms of resumes. There have been a lot of resume frauds, right? People can put whatever they want in their resumes and claim to know these skill sets. One of the biggest use cases would be having a virtual world where you have avatars that are essentially NFTs that hold this identity on chain, right? Which means once it's on chain, it's immutable and it cannot be, manipulated with or changed. So there are a lot of use cases in terms of digital identities. And it's not something that can be decentralized from day one. It's something that has to be gradually happening. And we're honestly at a very nascent stage in this case.
Wonderful. So I guess, apart from digital identity, metaverse, if we consider the identity in real world, there are much more opportunities of terrorism, fake passports, and fake identities. But in metaverse, as you mentioned, immutability, auditability, and that providing data on blockchain that eradicates the probability of copy of identity, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Wonderful. Moving in that direction, I guess that also transforms into crime in the metaverse, right? So I was currently at event in Dubai, GITEX, and what they mentioned here was there was a panel, and the person started with the notion murder in metaverse. Any thoughts of that?
I don't know about murder in the metaverse, but I have seen a lot of cases where your cyber bullying laws have to really change in the metaverse, right? One big example is Horizon Worlds that Meta recently launched. One of the biggest news I've heard about that is not about the game itself or the experience itself. It's rather a journalist talking about how she was molested in the metaverse. Now, when you had this on a chat-like format, the bullying is not as visual and not as realistic. Now, how do you cater to something where you feel like you're being, molested in the metaverse? There is no security. So we might need different laws in terms of cyber laws. We need maybe metaverse polices being around, kind of watching the space. These are very new concepts, honestly, because we don't really have those sort of experiences in a non-visual world, right? So I'm not sure about how you can murder an avatar, and that's very interesting to me. So I'd love to know more about that.
Unless you have a neural connection with the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, sure, haptic feedback can be very, very scary.
Going 50 years in the future, right? So maybe Mr. Musk can do that. So eventually, apart from digital crime, touching more on that aspect of metaverse, that data security, many people think that over the past 10 years, we have been picturing Facebook and Google as the heroes of digital world. Why? Number one, they have made it more centralized. It didn't take the vision of decentralized, but it became more centralized. Isolated different zones where people are living, right? You live on Facebook, you live on LinkedIn, you cannot connect both together. So, the point here is that, number one, these Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 technologies have created a digital isolated world. And number two, that data of people is not with their own ownership. As we say in Web 2.0 that you can own your data. Right? And this data is currently getting outsourced to anyone who wants the market. So, how Metaverse comes into picture in protecting that data, and number two, making sure that the future is not isolated as the past was.
Both of your questions have the same answer, which is the blockchain layer that sits below. So in terms of how you store your data and how it can be breached is something that has been a problem for the ages. And one of the biggest solutions is to decentralize that data, right? Encrypt it and put it in different devices. Now that is a way of solving for the data privacy issue. There are other ways as well where you can store it locally on a device, right? Like for example, the Quest Pro that launched just about 2 days ago by Meta, which has mixed reality as well, which is very, very cool. Everyone should watch the video. In terms of how they kind of capture facial expressions. Now this can be really used against your favor, right? People can unlock your phone remotely because you have face recognition put on your phone. In the case of this, Meta claims that they store all of this locally on the VR device and erase it on a regular basis. These are a couple of solutions that could probably help, right? But there is no right or wrong or solved for answer in terms of data privacy. Even the blockchain, there are hacks that exist, and we are yet to kind of figure out an innovation that makes sure that it's impossible rather than it becomes more difficult.
Absolutely, you put forward a very key point here that it's still very early to say is Metaverse a safe environment for data privacy because it's either public blockchain or private blockchain that can be used. Currently, everything that we are seeing is on public blockchain, and that's not the exact privacy that we desire or that an enterprise level adoption requires. So, in terms of that, what do you think is the future of Metaverse with enterprises, through private blockchains?
Right. I've already seen a couple of them come up, right? One of them is like Shopify is a great example. A lot of people are building the Shopify, but a visual Shopify, right? Here with Shopify, you can create your own, Web 2 e-commerce like interface and sell your products. Similarly, imagine having a 3D store where your avatar can essentially, wear the clothes or whatever they're selling and actually look at how it looks and then buy it in the real world. So this is a digital way of where the physical world and the metaverse world kind of combine together. But in terms of enterprises, there are also a lot of people exploring virtual workspaces in the metaverse. And Microsoft Teams has one of those. Gather is a great example of the same thing. So there are immense number of opportunities for enterprises in the metaverse as well.
Wonderful. So, in that aspect, what are the top choices for building a metaverse? I'm going on a technical side because of that curiosity that coming out of the questions. But what are the top blockchains from enterprise and a public side? If you can name any 2 or 3.
So, if you're talking about technical, there are right now with metaverses, there are 2 ways of getting into metaverse, right? You have the more immersive one where you have a VR headset. And you can actually explore the world in a way where it's kind of surrounding you 360 degrees. And there are web-based metaverses as well. These are a lot more accessible, and not everyone can afford a VR headset, right? They're not economical. So in terms of web-based ones, you have engines like Unity. Again, there are a lot of challenges when it comes down to it, right? What is the GPU of your device? If you have a hardware device, is it capable of actually rendering a world like this? The second thing is also connectivity. Digital equity is very, very low in India. People sitting in tier 1, cities wouldn't have that problem, but people sitting in tier 2, tier 3 cities still don't have the greatest internet connectivity. Now, how do you render a heavy 3D world on your laptop or your mobile phone, right? These are a couple of problems that come into the picture. There are lighter engines that you can use like 3JS. It's a library based on JavaScript that you can use, and it's very simple to build as well. If you're looking at VR, then you have Unreal, Unity, and there all of these game engines for that matter are using one of these two engines that exist, right? So yeah, these are a couple of technical ways you can build your metaverse.
Amazing. So again, one key point that was just pointed out, 3.js as you mentioned. I see many projects currently using 3.js. Just to give an example, it's kind of like a 3D environment created in a web portal only. And the thing is that just with blockchain, as there was misunderstanding, it's same with metaverse. People think that 3JS is actually the metaverse, nothing more, it's just a hype. And same with the Play 2 and games, that there nothing more, was just a hype. But eventually, it's segregating the metaverse based on the segments that it's accessible to everyone. That's the beauty of it. So in that aspect, touching upon the Play 2 part, I know we are short on time as well. So why metaverse are so focused on community building?
Right, great question, because that's exactly what we're doing. So community building has always been evolving, right? It started with back in the day when we did not have the internet. You had your gentleman's club where people used to hang out, talk about common things that they had. Similarly, now with the internet, you have communities that are built on Discord or Tribe.so. There are a lot of community platforms. I do think that humans always evolve, and which is why we have Web3, from Web 1 and Web 2. And the future of metaverses is going to be around community building. How many people can you get in your metaverse? How many people can you get to interact in your metaverse? And this essentially helps you cater to them like how you would in the real world, right? We have this physical conference right now, and we have so many, ad spaces and promotional activities happening. Imagine the same thing happening in the metaverse where you guys don't have to travel from your homes or travel from the US to come and actually talk here, right? You can do all of this in the metaverse. So it's just a matter of convenience. It's definitely not to, replace your real world experiences. It's rather to enhance what you can't do in the real world through a metaverse.
For a person like me, it's very convenient. I overslept and came late. Otherwise, I could have just logged in from my hotel room only.
I would have preferred to do this from home too, because Bangalore traffic is very, very hard. But just on the topic of India and metaverses, right? What do you think are the biggest challenges for India to come to the forefront when it comes to metaverses?
Okay, so see, personally, I think people usually say skill, but it's not at all a challenge. I know a person who's 21 years old and who's built smart contracts that have hold millions of dollars of liquidity. So India is at the forefront in terms of skill. India is at the forefront in terms of innovation. India is just a little behind or a lot behind in terms of adoption. Metaverse still is getting a lot of government appreciation, as we recently saw with the Polygon recently teamed up with some government for FIRs on Metaverse. So still Metaverse is getting that kind of exposure, but the lack of clarity in what is regulated and what is not regulated, giving the people the ability to explore openly, that's missing factor that I believe.
I do also think digital equity, as I mentioned, the internet's not equal everywhere across India. Accessibility of good devices is hard in India, and these are a couple of things that would propel us, because in terms of, as I mentioned, talent, we are already there. We are high in number. Definitely quality is something that we should cater to. But in terms of, what people can buy with the money that they have is actually a very, very big challenge in India. And of course, regulatory uncertainties are definitely something that we should look into and figure out a way to clear-cut, have clear-cut rules on what we can do and what we cannot do with the metaverse.
I guess the time's up. Thank you so much, Kavya. It was great discussing with you. I guess.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kavya. Thank you, Harman. Again, if you have any questions for any of them, please ask them while having a beer later at the end of the event. We will have the time there to discuss more.